We now move over to Southeast Asia for our next story, and Thailand and Cambodia have agreed to hold a meeting of defence officials towards resuming the months-old ceasefire as the fierce border fighting between them has entered the third week, killing at least 80 people so far. The decision was taken during a special meeting in Kuala Lumpur of Southeast Asian foreign ministers who were trying to salvage a truce first brokered by ASEAN Chair Malaysia and US President Donald Trump after a previous round of deadly clashes in July. Thailand and Cambodia have engaged in daily exchanges of rockets and artillery along their 817-kilometre land border following the collapse of the truce, with fighting at multiple points stretching from forested regions near Laos to the coastal provinces of the Gulf of Thailand. Joining us now is Collins Chong-Yu-Keat, a foreign affairs, security and strategy analyst, joining us live from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Of course, this comes 3 weeks after this fighting broke out once again over a landmine incident. And previously, even when Donald Trump announced another ceasefire on Truth Social, Thailand and Cambodia both came out and said that they weren't going to abide to it. However, now they are agreeing to talk again today. However, fighting has intensified. What's actually different this time, and what could make a ceasefire stick?
Well, these defense talks, they signal damage control, and we have seen how both sides now recognize the escalating cost of escalation. Now that the cost of this escalation have outweighed the benefits, and this is about containment, and of course it's not at the stage of reconciliation. So we have seen how this is in the category of defense level talk, and it's not politically substantive, and this is being treated as a security and command control problem. So this allows both sides to de-escalate quietly without the baggage of political calculations, to avoid nationalist backlash both at home, and of course also to preserve the needed leverage, the opening, of course also the political phase needed to ensure that both sides have the on-the-ground will and capacity to de-escalate quietly. So we can expect some coordination in terms of potential ceasefire, and to resume communication hotlines, as well as of course also to have these kind of new mechanisms for troop disengagement. But we should be realistic and practical enough not to expect any kind of talks on border settlements, on legal resolutions and all that. So this is about buying time. It's not about buying peace. And both sides now recognize the increasing cost and risk of letting this escalate freely. So this is what we have seen now: the capacity and the pressure that have been sent to both sides to at least resume talks at the military level, and to, of course, to explore the possibility of immediate ceasefire in the days to come.
Yeah, and this deal, or these talks, emerged from a special ASEAN meeting in Kuala Lumpur, a bloc that's been heavy with scrutiny. Does this show ASEAN still holds relevance?
Well, as I've argued before, that again, time and time again, this has exposed the structural and systemic weaknesses of ASEAN. This weak crisis management mechanism. ASEAN doesn't have the enforcement capability, and is still being trapped by its own internal mantra of non-interference and the focus on diplomatic approach. And we have seen that to have failed before in the case of Myanmar, and this time he has failed again in the case of Thailand and Cambodia. And this reinforces the perception that ASEAN is reactive in nature, it's not preventive in nature. So he has no deterrent capacity, unlike what Washington has to offer in terms of pressure on both sides. And both Thailand and Cambodia have not been relying so much on ASEAN to offer the needed economic buffer, or the needed pressure being sent by ASEAN, because ASEAN to them simply does not have the needed capacity to compel both sides to come to this agreement. And it is out of their own, again, the internal factor in both Thailand and Cambodia have driven this conflict also. And so far we have failed to see any kind of substantive and and credible and effective measures being sent by ASEAN. And again, we will need the external intervention, external pressure, and that will only come with the credible pressure and the non-conventional approach by Trump and by Washington to ensure that both sides comply at least with the call to de-escalate and to prevent escalation of the crisis.
What pressure exactly does Washington have over Bangkok and Phnom Penh in this border conflict?
Well, we have seen how, in the early phases of the timeline, what Trump has, offered in terms of also projecting this new positive future outline for both nations, especially to Thailand, in terms of greater economic support, in terms of greater, calculations in terms of tariff measures. But again, at the same time, also we have seen how Thailand especially has been also relying quite a bit on the security umbrella of the US, and that is also part of the equation where, with this Trump, approach, we have seen how the increasing, factor, the interlink factor between economic support as well as the security umbrella being provided to this part of the world, especially to Thailand, and of course also the internal factor plays a huge role here in terms of how the need to appease the local sentiments, and of course also we have seen how this explosion of domestic sentiments, especially in Thailand, to repel this external pressure or external interference, especially by both ASEAN, or in the case Malaysia has been the mediator, as well as the interference by the US, and that would need to be balanced carefully by the current administration of Thailand. But again, ASEAN has been weak, and there's no other credible intervention or support needed, except only with from Washington. So that's how Trump sees this, and now that China is trying to increase its own presence and credibility in terms of this crisis management, but there's no other force that can compare both sides other than Washington in terms of economic offering, in terms of security offering, and China is trying to fill that gap, but it has not been that effective so far, and I don't foresee any kind of profound role being played by Beijing here, except only, of course, the double down by Trump can only work from here, and of course with support and help from ASEAN and Malaysia.
Collins, do stay with us as we move on to our next story. And Pope Leo has expressed his disapproval over Russia's rejection of calls for a ceasefire, calling it a great sorrow. Speaking about ongoing conflicts around the world,